I would like to get things started. It's half past the hour, and yeah, timing's great. And so first up, we have a panel which is mixing it up, latest techniques for innovating in user acquisition and retention. And we've got a great range of panelists on there, including AppsFlyer, Opera Event, Agora.io, and Tilting Point, which I'll let all of them introduce themselves. But first, yeah, as you can see on the screen, we've got my old colleague and good friend Craig Chapple, who is now Sensor Tower, who some of you might know as our former editor of PocketGamer.biz, and Craig will be moderating the whole thing, so I'll let him do all of his introductions. But it's good to see you, Craig, albeit in this digital world.
Yeah, this is weird, but hello everyone. Thanks for the intro, appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. As Sophia just said, yeah, so we're going to do our panel today on mixing it up, the latest techniques for innovating in user acquisition and retention. So yeah, I'm mobile insight strategist for EMEA at mobile intelligence firm Sensor Tower. And as Sophia said, I used to be the editor of PocketGamer.biz, so I've done a few PGCs in my time.
So you know how all this works, but you're also an expert in this field, so a great moderator to have and to open up our growth track this afternoon, or afternoon where we are, but second half of day one.
Yes, yeah.
But if everything's all right, we'll bring in the panelists. I'll let you do your work as the moderator and introduce all of them and get things going. But yeah, it's great to have you here. It's brilliant to see you again, albeit not in person.
All right, thank you.
No worries.
So yeah, I mean, I just did the intros myself, but please welcome to all the panelists. We've got some excellent experts here today. So if you could all introduce yourselves, perhaps we'll start with Clara, and then we'll go through the panelists.
Sure, happy to. Hey, I'm Clara Copeland, the Director of Sales for AppsFlyer. I'm looking or overseeing the Central European market. I've been in the industry now for close to 10 years, actually. Started off my career in San Francisco in ad tech back in the days, working on the monetization side for fiber. Back then, got people to optimize their ad revenue via mediation, and then moved to Berlin about 4 years ago, joining AppsFlyer, building up the Berlin office. Yeah, excited to be here.
That's great. Sid?
Yep. Hey, everybody. I'm Sid Sharma. I'm the Director of Developer Relations and Partner Engineering at Agora. I've been in developer relations for almost 5 years now. So, talking to developers across different verticals from, gaming, but social and enterprise developers as well. So different target audiences for developers and really understanding what's important to them. And it really particularly focuses on the developer journey in terms of developer acquisition, developer retention, and developer experience as one, the three key components of what, we do on a day-to-day basis. So great to be here and excited to be a part of the panel.
Thanks, Sid. Rockford?
Yeah, hi, I'm Rockford Yapp. I am the Director of Growth Marketing at Tilting Point, where I basically oversee user acquisition strategy for our portfolio of games, and oversee the sort of like testing platform and policy for admitting new games into our portfolios. So prior to that, I was on the network side working at Action, doing campaign optimization, account management, things like that. So I've been in the mobile industry now for about 6 years now. Yeah, excited to talk about some new trends in UA and retention.
Thanks, Rockford. And last but not least, we have Erik.
Hey, I'm Erik Bryant. I'm with a company called Opera Event. I'm the CRO and co-founder. It's kind of an influencer marketing technology company. And I've been in the industry for a little while. I was early on at Vungle and AppsFlyer, as well as working on the non-vendor side at Sega and EA.
Thanks, everyone. So we're going to break this talk up into 2 parts. So the first part, we're largely going to talk about user acquisition, and then we'll go into retention. In the meantime, if anyone has any questions, please use the Q&A. I'll be keeping an eye, so perhaps some we can bring up during the panel, but if not, we'll raise those questions at the end when we have time for questions. So the first question, just as a really broad general question, I guess, what are the latest trends in the user acquisition space that developers should be aware of that are going to be key to their marketing efforts? I don't know if we want to start off with Clara.
Yeah, sure. So I think in terms of trends, I think what we've been seeing at AppsFlyer specifically when we're looking at the networks that users that marketers are buying on, it's that people are shifting budgets a little bit away from Google and Facebook, more towards a few new players, right? We're looking at Apple search ads, also players like TikTok that have recently come into the market and have been showing some promising results. So I think generally there's a trend towards just trying out new sources, diversifying your traffic portfolio to really optimize your campaigns and really figure out the right mix for your individual business.
Okay, great.
To kind of build on that too, yeah, obviously like channel diversity is becoming huge with Facebook and Google becoming a lot more expensive just in the recent months, but and it's hardly a new trend, but I mean, like obviously creative optimization is going to be huge, especially on those platforms that are getting more and more expensive. If the CPMs in general are going up, the more installs that you can squeeze out of those media buys, the better, regardless of channel. But I think, a big trend is just going to be able to just kind of like really systematically optimize your creatives, make sure that, all of your creatives are tailored to your audience and really driving, the most efficient sort of like IPMs that you can drive on your campaign, regardless of whatever channel you're advertising in.
And Erik or Sid, anything else you want to?
Yeah, I think we can get into it more later, but we are seeing kind of a creativeness a lot around UA on like influencers, so getting people to kind of promote their apps or games. And it's not, I mean, we're kind of seeing money go away from the duopoly of Google and Facebook and going to other places like TikTok or just like whether it's Twitch or influencers on YouTube or influencers on Twitch.
All right, cool. So we mentioned there a few times about the main channels, Facebook and Google, and then developers moving away to other channels such as TikTok or Snapchat or App Store search ads. But are people really still, or should people still be focused on Facebook and Google? And then how do you really fit the other channels in? Like, are they really worth putting your money in? And would you advise, there's a lot of questions here, and would you advise just putting your money into those if you're a small developer, or have you really still got to look at Facebook and Google?
I can chime in on that. So I would say most of the time, for most developers, Facebook, Google, and Apple search ads will be sufficient. Like until you start getting into like hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in spend, you can get by on those channels pretty effectively and at a pretty decent ROAS. I think that's probably not going to change for a little while. There are obviously some other platforms that are showing promise, like at Tilting Point, we're seeing a lot of promise in Snapchat. They've really come a long way in terms of like their targeting tools and lookalike tools over the past year or so. And albeit they have a much smaller audience than say you'll be able to find on Facebook and Google, we're getting a lot of the really kind of premium ROAS and like LTVs that we come to expect from the duopoly. So I think that's a really, really promising channel if you're really looking to diversify outside of the duopoly or even Apple search ads. But and I think upcoming TikTok is obviously going to be huge. Everybody's trying to figure it out right now. It's super interesting just because of how many users are on the platform, how young the user base is and everything. But for Tilting Point, at least so far, their ads platform has been a little bit too finicky to be reliable. I don't think their whole ad product is quite there yet, but I think it would be impossible to say that it would be foolish to say that they're not going to become a huge player in UA in the next year, right? I mean, like they've just got so much potential. They've got so much AI and machine learning behind their product. And I think like once they really, really figure out how to how to do UA and target their audiences a little bit more sophisticatedly, then that's going to be a huge potential player that'll probably even be able to rival Facebook and Google in just a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's interesting with TikTok, and I think they've got over 2 billion downloads now just from the App Store and Google Play, and I believe they just hired a new CEO specifically for TikTok. So yeah, definitely going to be big moves by them. But I don't know if anyone else wanted to add anything to that question. So Clara or Erik?
No, I think Rockford already said it quite well. I mean, look, in general, right, I think it would be premature to say that Google and Facebook aren't like the strong players for a long time, because it all comes down to targeting capabilities, and they just have incredible data and incredible capabilities. And in the end, it all comes down to finding the right balance and understanding where you can get, quality versus quantity, and who provides you with the best combination of the two. And there's a variety of players that can offer you both, right? And you just have to kind of experiment with it. But I think if you're a small developer and you probably want to play it safe, and you just want to, you just want to have a safe bet on getting good users, then you're probably going to start off with Facebook and Google. They're getting more expensive, but you just know what you're getting. Not saying that other players can't deliver the same results, but it's just going to take a little bit more time. And in the beginning, we just see a lot of people starting off with those two partners, and adding Apple search ads into the mix, and then slowly diversifying their portfolio, because it's also a question of resources in the end, because you have to manage all of that as well. So that's what we're seeing on our end.
Not much different to add on here, but the thoughts around TikTok, a lot of gaming companies are trying to figure out how to crack TikTok, because it's a little bit of a different platform, and so that's one of the reasons why we're working with some influencers to create some creatives for that platform. But yeah, it's when you're starting out, Facebook and Google are the easiest. They're self-serve, get up and running very quickly. You've got some great targeting options, but once those start getting expensive, or once those creatives aren't working as well, or you just want to get more creative, there's different options to reach out to. But there's just so much that Facebook and Google can offer that it's kind of difficult to experiment when you're small.
So when you're kind of testing your ads to see what's most effective, but what is it you should actually be looking for? Are you looking for ads that should drive the most users, or ads that drive the most quality users? And then how do you track that?
Yeah, I'll take that one, because that's essentially what we do as an attribution company. I think number one, I think it comes down to strategy, right? If you're trying to get a high volume, then you're obviously just looking for a network that can drive a ton of installs. But I think not only recently, right, over the past few years, we've seen a massive shift in terms of looking not only in install numbers, but actually looking at quality metrics, right? Retention, you're looking at loyal users. You're obviously also looking at your return on your investment, right? Who's actually bringing me users that are valuable? Now, whatever that means to you, that can be just users that are frequently visiting your app. It can be users who are generating a lot of money. It can be a combination of both. But in general, you want to make sure you measure every install that's coming in, and you then look at the user over the lifetime of to really understand the quality of users every single campaign is delivering to you, so you can optimize that and continue to buy users that you really want to acquire.
Real quick, I'll chime in, because with influencers, there's kind of a fine line here, where an influencer can push an app, and if they're paid for performance, then they may just do like a contest or something just to get a bunch of installs. But if it's not relevant to maybe their content, there may just be a lot of installs with people just kind of not even getting past the tutorial. So it's really important when dealing with influencers that you know what you're getting yourself into. If you're paying the influencer for everyone that gets to level 10, then that's a little bit better. But I think that with influencers especially, there should be more of a focus on ROAS, because we've seen with other companies that they've just been burned by influencers that just get them a sheer amount of installs, and it doesn't really turn into much.
Yeah, and that's actually adding to that point, Eric. I think something that we also measure, and that's a critical component, is uninstall rates, because you really want to understand, okay, not only how many installs did someone or an influencer or a network deliver, but how many of those users actually are sticking around or are uninstalling my app. Not only as kind of a quality metric, but then you can also use that to then retarget specific users, right, that might have been valuable but uninstalled your app. So it gives you an understanding of quality, but it also gives you an opportunity to really go back and get those users back into your app if they were valuable to you in the first place.
So, sorry, Robert.
Well, I think I'm going to take kind of an opposite stand, honestly. I think, you know, most of the time, obviously this is going to be a different situation for, say, like influencers, where there's a little bit more kind of at play there. But I feel like most of the time, you know, the job of the creatives is just to get users to convert, and the job of the, you know, quality really is the job of like the targeting and the ad set, right? So I mean, like, the better that you can kind of like target your users and tailor your ads to your audience, the better. I mean, like, every audience is going to have a different reaction to a different type of ad. And at the end of the day, you're trying to, you know, squeeze as many users out of certain value buckets, right? I mean, if you can get, you know, a bunch of users to convert at a much higher rate in your high quality bucket than you can in your low quality bucket, that's going to be an overall net win. And it's going to be the same in your lower quality buckets as well. But I don't know. I feel like it's maybe an unpopular opinion that, you know, like, ads don't really drive quality users in the same way that like targeting does. But speaking, you know, just from personal experience, like I've never really thought about the ad that I clicked on when I made a purchase in a mobile game. You know, it was about like how the game, you know, resonated with me and how much I enjoyed it and everything. And that seldom has much to do with the creative. If it was appealing and it drew me in and it got me to install, then it did its job. And then from there, if the game was made for me and is a good fit for what I was interested in, then I'm going to become a higher value user for that game.
I was quickly going to say I agree. It does depend on the creative, only in certain circumstances when those creatives don't show anything around the game, which are very popular. But yeah, I do agree with Rockford on his points.
So kind of, yeah, narrowing in a bit more on influencer marketing, you know, is it really worthwhile doing at the moment, considering you can just go to Facebook and Google, or perhaps another channel, and then what's kind of the most cost-effective way to drive those users to your mobile game through that?
So yeah, influencer marketing can be very tricky and very challenging, and I think it is worth testing out. But before you get too deep, you need to kind of understand what you're getting into, and what I mean by that is, what are the KPIs? Are the KPIs kind of like we described? Is it just sheer amount of installs? Is it people that get to level 10? Is it ROAS? And the influencers don't like being paid for performance. So what we do at AppsFlyer is we kind of are the middleman, and we know what kind of what results that we can get. So we will pay the influencers, usually not by performance, but we sometimes can take you know, performance costs from advertisers. So it is worth trying out in different fashions, and one shouldn't go to like a ninja or, you know, or a huge person on YouTube if they don't know exactly what they're getting into, because it can be very costly. And I gave an example of Dr. Disrespect when he did a World of Tanks on his channel, and didn't drive many installs at all. It just wasn't a good fit for his audience. So if you know the audience of the influencer, it could be good. Also, we work with mostly smaller to medium-sized influencers, which have higher engagement, and that can be much more worth it. And the last point I will say is that influencer marketing, because it's been such a challenge, that's why we developed the product where it doesn't rely on the influencer to generate installs or to post anything. They actually create the content offline, and we cut that into an ad that can be then used on Facebook or Google, or those ad networks we talked about. So we're utilizing like these influencers and these people and how authentic they are, but just not relying on them to post the correct AppsFlyer link, right? Or to get people, to get people to level 10, or to get, drive ROAS. But I think that there are some ways that influencers can be effective.
Yeah, and just to chime in here, actually, we've seen at Agora, we've seen a lot of our customers looking into influencer marketing more and more, especially with the micro influencers when you're talking about a niche market, right? Whether you're talking about RPG games or shooting games, whatever it is, right? It doesn't even have to be gaming, but really when you're talking about the micro influencer or the influencer that you're looking to convert users into active users, right? It's really about the campaign that you run around it. From what we've seen, the most effective type of influencer marketing from our customer base is really coming from the engagement that you offer with the influencer. So for example, some of our customers are running campaigns with these micro influencers to actually jump on the game and be able to play along with some of the active gamers. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can use that influencer community to not only convert your users and get them to install the game, but become active users and look forward to a certain event or a certain milestone that they reach, and they can interact with that micro influencer that they look up to or want to converse with. So I think there's a lot of hidden gems around influencer marketing as a whole. And it's going to be more and more interesting to see, especially with TikTok and other social apps. How can we engage these users with these influencers even further?
Okay, great, thanks. We actually have a couple audience questions, and then we'll start getting on to retention. So one question is, I don't know if you can all see this, but what ad creative themes, and in brackets, new versus pro, fail, etc., bring the highest quality users with high retention and high return on ad spend? If anyone can answer that.
From my experience, and also what I've heard from other gaming clients, for casual games, that new versus pro or the fail are very effective, and we're trying to replicate that with like actual influencers or actual people who are playing. But those ones can be very effective from what I've heard.
Yeah, that mirrors my experience too. The pro versus noob generally gets pretty high engagement rates and drives a high amount of quality users. But like again, to my point earlier, it kind of depends on who you're targeting. Like if you're targeting a low value bucket, you're still going to get low value users. But as long as you're acquiring them at the right rate, then all is good.
I think one quick thing I forgot to add on was that the fail is a very interesting thought, because I and many other people watch influencers or watch people because of their fails. Like, I mean, there's like Fail Army, there's all these websites. And then, I watch Dr. Disrespect, not because he's like cool, but just because I like to see him rage. And I think that, there's a very good market for people to see that games can be challenging. If you make every single game ad seem easy and seem straightforward, too straightforward, that can only last for so long. I think these fail type of videos are pretty helpful, and we've actually done a couple of those, and they seem to be pretty effective.
Okay, thank you. And the other question we had was, what is a good click-through rate on an ad these days? I'm sure this is pretty quite a wide-ranging question, but.
This depends entirely on the channel, like 100% on the channel. Like a lot of reward video channels will have like excellent click-through rates, whereas, banners might not have good click-through rates at all and so on. But I would say if you're running a Facebook campaign, just like your normal run-of-the-mill Facebook campaign, if you can get 1.5% click-through rates, that's pretty good.
Okay, great, thanks. And then one more UA question I wanted to ask Rockford is that when calculating UA spends, what KPIs should developers be looking at, and then what does tilting point typically do? And also onto that, should you be focused on day 30, like day 60, day 90, and then I've heard, day 365.
All right. So when we're trying to figure out our UA spend, I mean, the most important thing here is like LTV and payback period. So, I mean, without those things, you're kind of running blind, right? So understanding like when does a cohort max out in value, and that kind of determines what you should be focusing on, whether it's day 30, day 60, whatever. Like most like very casual games or like hyper casual games, most of those LTV curves flatten out after a couple of weeks, right? So like a day 90 LTV really doesn't matter as much for those kind of games, whereas like an SLG 4X kind of game might have an LTV curve that's even 2 years long, right? So so it really depends, but I think like the most important thing is to just understand like, all right, what is the max value that I'm going to get out generally out of a typical cohort, and how long do I have to make that money back, basically. But I mean, outside of just, LTV and payback window, understanding the retention profile of the game, the CPI and IPM kind of really help us understand the reach and the scale that game can support, because those are going to kind of inform like how much can we actually buy against this game and remain profitable. So but in regards to focusing on like day 30 or day 90, whatever, I think, it's obviously important to keep a really close eye on your early returns. So like your day 3s and day 7s, day 14s, just to make sure that you're staying on the right track. But it's really, really important to know, like for your game specifically, when do cohorts stop returning value, and that is different for every single game and something you're going to have to understand for your game specifically. But I think if you're keeping a close eye on day 1 through day 30 and staying on a track that is going to get you to ROAS positivity wherever your ROAS curve or LTV curve flattens out, then you're going to be in good shape.
Okay, great, thanks. So we'll move on to retention. I know there's another question there. We'll loop back to that at the end. So now that you've got these players through user acquisition and kind of building on what we were just talking about, so you've got them through user acquisition or organically, keeping them is obviously the next big challenge. So does the UA process need to feed into the onboarding? So for example, are you setting player expectations from an ad or not? So I wonder if anyone can answer that. Clara or Sid?
Yeah, I'm happy to take it. I mean, I'm not a marketer, but what we've seen is going back to the whole uninstall topic, right? You want to make sure that you do set expectations with the ad. I think everybody, right? If your ad is misleading and you're downloading a game or any app that has nothing to do with what was promised, it's a very poor user experience, and the likelihood of you then dropping out of the game is very, very high. So you do want to make sure that somehow there is an alignment between your ad and your actual product. And then I think, of course, then your product needs to deliver, and then you need to make sure that you have that figured out. And then I think as the next step, and then the product is something you can't, as a marketer, then you can't really influence, right? But then I think if you're looking at retention, then of course you have a few ways of then re-engaging those users, and making sure they stick with the app, and there's a few smart ways of going about it, right? You can start off with push notifications, etc., just to make sure you get them at the right time. And of course you want to make sure the messaging is optimized as well, or you can make sure that you optimize on the conversions when it comes to your IAPs, etc. So there's a lot of ways to go about it then to make sure the players actually stick around. But I think primarily you want to make sure the onboarding process itself is seamless and smooth, and you deliver on your promises.
Yeah, I think Clara hit it directly on the nail. So Yeah, I think really just associating the ad to the onboarding experience is very important, right? Show the users why they downloaded your app, right? What caught their interest in the ad. Some of the best tactics that I've seen in the gaming industry is really just showing using the starter level as the onboarding sequence, right? Like showing the player how to move around and work through the game and understand the controls of the game to get them more familiar. So when they dive right into the first level or whatever it is, the actual gameplay itself, they're already an quote unquote advanced user, right? So I think really associating that ad to the gameplay is one of the best type of tactics, because you're showing them directly what you're about to get into. And again, don't give them any false promises, right? So I think that's the biggest thing, is keeping that trust and keeping the expectations level set. We'll make sure that you won't lose tons of users in the first 24 hours or so.
And one quick point I'll make too is when working with influencers, retention's also a major point, and as I explained before, it can be very difficult. So you can you got to think of the long tail when you think of influencers, and not just have them promote it and kind of stop. You got to have them say, hey, come join my alliance, and then you can have them like having an alliance with their fans, or maybe you give them codes the next month to give out or something like that. These will help keep the players in or just bring them back.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know we've all seen those ads where it's like a big 3D battle, something's going on, looks like a console game, and you go in, it's a 4X strategy. So one of the things I wanted to talk about here was, as a way of retaining players, is the social aspects. So kind of a question for perhaps Sid and Rockford. Can your game be successful in the long term without any social aspects?
Yeah, this topic is very near and dear to me, because I think at Agora, that's really what we're trying to do: provide real-time engagement, especially for the gaming area, as well as social apps in general. But I want to go on a limb and say, if you're a multiplayer game and you don't have social interaction, you're probably not going to stick around too long. And the reason why I'm saying this is I think as we move more and more past this COVID pandemic, as well as just, as the world becomes more virtual, right? We're spending more and more times on the screen. We're losing really touch of reality, right? How many interactions have you had in the past month in person, right? I hope few to very little, and you guys are all social distancing. But that really shows that where the world is headed. I think as AR, VR develop even further, as people spend more and more time on their screen, they want that social component of their real world really kind of ported to the virtual world, and you're able to have those social interactions and talk with your friends or your virtual friends online, and while you're playing, and while you're playing the game. So I think and I know it's a strong opinion, but I think if you're a multiplayer game and you don't have social interactions enabled in your app already, I think you're already behind the curve.
Yeah, and to build on that, I mean, like, that's all 100% true. We see it reflected in a lot of the games in Tilting Point's portfolio. Like, is it possible to have long-term success without it? Yeah, absolutely. But like Sid was saying, if you're a multiplayer game and you don't have social aspects, you're toast. I mean, that's what people like about multiplayer games. But I mean, just in general, even if it's not a multiplayer game, having an ability to join like a club or a guild within even like a casual game where you can help other people out, loan them resources, whatever, it just really drives a sense of community that really makes players more sticky. And this has been true for a while for a lot of our games. The games with the strongest communities tend to perform better, but especially in like a post-COVID reality, people are looking for that community, and one of the best ways to kind of give that community to somebody is within the games that they already love. So I think it's definitely, if you have an opportunity to stick a social aspect into your game, and it fits with the style of game, absolutely go for it.
A question I have for Clara is that how can you use the data that you have on engagement and retention in your game and then feed that back into your user acquisition efforts?
Sorry, was on mute. Yeah, so generally, right, all the data that we're measuring, you can funnel back in real time to your partners, and they can then use that to optimize on their end. So I think that is the first thing, right? Whether it's about building lookalike audiences, etc., right? The more data your partners have, the better they can target and get you similar users. And then at the same time, coming back to the retargeting topic, you can of course then also use the data of your users to build segments and then target them with specific messaging or offerings to keep them in your app, or also to get users back into the app that might have uninstalled. You have the ability, of course, like when it comes to retargeting, people always are worried about the additional spend. They say, hey, it's quite pricey, and how do we even know if a user that's being retargeted is actually then performing better than a user? Like, wouldn't the user who hasn't seen the ad acted the exact same way? How do we know? And that's essentially then where incrementality testing comes in, right? Where you want to split your retargeting like a segment into groups, send them to individual partners, have a control group, and really see how the control group is behaving compared to the users that are seeing ads, and then to see, okay, was there an incremental lift, and what is it, and is it worth it for me to invest additional budget in order to keep these users, because they might be generating revenue for me further down the line. So I think those are the things that people are now looking into, and incrementality right now definitely is a huge topic. And I think in gaming specifically, retargeting is something that not a lot of people are tapping into just yet. So it's going to be interesting to see how that's being adopted further down the line.
Okay, and so I guess one last question for me, and then we've got a couple audience questions. So what are some of the benchmarks that developers should be looking for? So for example, what retention rates should you be looking for a successful mobile game? That's a very broad question. So I guess in your answers, like maybe narrow it down to the genre, I guess. Perhaps Rockford?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the longer, the better, obviously. I would say if you can keep a week one retention in like the 30%, you're doing tremendously. But
what type of game is that?
Like a typical casual game, I think, like, I mean, not trying to get too specific, because I mean, like, again, it really is genre specific, but I mean, I've seen numbers for like hyper casual games aiming for 50%, day 7 and stuff like that. But I mean, like, typically if you can keep above 30%, you're doing pretty good at day 7, that is. And then longer term, it really just kind of depends on a whole slew of factors for your games, even within just like casual games or within specific genres. Like a day 30 or a day 60 can be wildly different, just relative to how much content does your game have and things like that. So like, if your game only has, say, a month worth of content, and you're keeping a pretty good day 30 retention, then great. But I mean, obviously you're not going to have a stellar day 90 retention if you've only got 1 month of content within the game. So but I think if you can like keep that day 7 healthy, it'll at least give you a clear indicator that you're on the right track, and that you should keep kind of keep working on the idea.
Anyone else want to add anything to that? But no worries. All right. So we got a few audience questions, and that's perhaps Rockford's kind of builds on what you were just saying. So do push notifications help increase retention in casual games as they do in word games?
Yes, 100%. So, I mean, I think about this all the time, and one of the things that I think Tilting Point does really well is just like live ops and player engagement. But I mean, most people have 100 apps on their phone. It's really easy to just forget about the game that you installed last week if it's just out of sight. It's super easy to put it out of mind. So push notifications, regardless of genre, regardless of what you're doing, as long as you're keeping it relevant, and you're not just every single push notification is like, hey, we're still here. it's a solid strategy for really any game, any type of game that you're running.
Yeah, and I want to chime in here. I think, I think Rockford hit it on the nail as well. I think and another aspect to look at it is, I think that social component, going back to that topic, your friends can act like, real life social push notifications, right? Your friend pings you saying, hey, let's jump on Word with Friends, for example, or let's jump on Bunch, for example. That's another method that is not the traditional push notification, but we like to look at it as the real life push notification, as your friends are trying to ping you to play the game, right? So I think push notifications do a great job, but that social component as well can definitely help bring your users back to the app and increase those retention rates.
Yeah, just to build on that personal anecdote, I had not played on chess.com for probably over a year and a half. And once the lockdown started, my friend just challenged me. The notification popped up on my app, and boom, I'm back in just like that after a year and a half. So, I mean, like, it's very real, especially with the social component or multiplayer games.
Yeah, those chess.com notifications are very effective. So another question we got is, are there any tips and tricks for increasing day one retention?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is like that early day one, that first week is where push notifications are really kind of like the most effective, I think. So yeah, I mean, like reminding people of their daily reward for the game, or, that their power up had been completed or whatever it may be. But I mean, like, just remind people that, there's stuff going on in the background in your game and that you should come back and re-engage with it. So, but I outside of that, I think day one is probably a little early to try retargeting campaigns or anything like that. But I think push notifications are going to be your best bet there.
I'm not sure if we have hyper casual specialists here, but correct me if I'm wrong. But the question is, what is the typical and best ROAS for ad heavy games like hyper casual? If anyone's able to answer that. But I think we're all generally.
When I was at Sega, we had some not hyper casual but pretty casual games that were ad heavy, but we just didn't do any UA for it, so I can't speak upon that. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then I think we had just a couple other questions, trying to work out which ones we've actually answered, because I haven't been dismissing them. So, so going back to user acquisition, are there any user acquisition techniques or areas of research you can suggest for new indie developers?
I think, just like audience building and audience research, like, as an indie developer, the kind of person that you want to be playing your game, or that will, your game will resonate with the most. So figuring out where those people are and how to target them in the most efficient way is probably going to be the most impactful thing you can do. I mean, there's obviously a slew of other things, but I say if you focus on just one thing, understanding how lookalike audiences work on Facebook, understanding, how like bidding strategy on the video networks work, and so on, is just going to be huge, because, just being like the biggest and hardest thing to do in UA is being able to acquire players at a cost that's lower than their LTV, right? And if you know your audience and know where you can find them, and if you can find them in 3 different places, and one of them is going to be the most expensive, one of them is going to be the cheapest, that's going to be your best chance at really scaling and remaining profitable.
Okay, thank you. I guess we've pretty got time. Oh, sorry, Clara, were you going to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, without promoting our own brand, but especially if you're an indie developer, we have, it's called our Mama brand. It's essentially just a free content that we provide, where we pair up with the best experts in the field across all different verticals, right? Whether it's gaming or any other app vertical. And there's a lot of interesting, like, it's just a knowledge base essentially with around UA techniques and other interesting facts. And there's like a mama boards where people explain individual strategies. So I'd highly recommend checking that out. Just to get some additional insights, because people do tend to share a lot, and it's really cool stuff.
Okay, we'll do one more question. So do banners, static ads, GIFs, let's say it's GIFs, HTML5 ads still work? And if so, do they drive good retention and return on ad spend? So I guess it's kind of between that and maybe video and playables is the question.
So I think, again, it kind of just depends what you mean by still work, right? I mean, like, obviously you can get users using all of these creatives. In my experience, video is still king and it works the best. But you know, static ads and banners, of course, have their place. I think anything, but I do think that like anything with movement. So if you are running GIFs, HTML5, something that's going to grab your attention better than just a static image on the page. Statics are just so much easier to tune out. So if you've got something that pops or something that moves, anything to draw the eye is going to give you a leg up.
Just one more question, just to clarify something before Clara. So someone just wanted a bit more clarification on what MAMA is.
Oh, MAMA, it's abbreviation for Mobile Attribution and Marketing Analytics. So it's just our own brand in terms of educational content. You can find it on appsflyer.com and just look for MAMA, the MAMA library, essentially. Or if you Google MAMA library AppsFlyer, it will come up and you'll have all the content there.
Wondering if that was a legit question or an AppsFlyer.
I wonder as well. I don't know. I might have paid someone to ask it too.
All right. Thank you for that. Thanks everyone for being on the panel. I guess is Sophia here? Can we
Hello, I am here.
Hello. Cool.
Oh, thank you, Craig. Thank you to all of the panelists. Yeah, really interesting and fascinating discussion. So yeah, thank you all for being with us.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. I really appreciate
Thanks for
it.
having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.